They left her in the ashes, broken, bleeding, forgotten. But what they didn't know was that she carried something ancient, something powerful, buried deep in her blood. When a lone scavenger chose to save her, he didn't just rescue a stranger. He reignited a truth their leaders fought to erase. This isn't a story of war, it's the story of one girl, one memory, and a light they couldn't destroy. The truth has woken. Are you ready to remember? If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move toward this wonderful story. The ground crunched beneath Taran's boots as he stepped across the battlefield, the ash rising in faint clouds with every move. The war had ended weeks ago, at least that's what the broadcasts claimed, but the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that swallowed noise, that made the hum of wind through broken metal feel like a scream. Wrecked tanks lay like sleeping beasts in the dust, and scattered alien drones sparked weakly in the ruins. There were bodies, too, some human, some not. Most had no one left to claim them. Taran wasn't a soldier anymore. He had stopped being one when the last dropship pulled out and left him behind. Now, he was a scavenger, drifting from place to place, living off scraps. He wasn't looking for weapons or food this time. No, he was chasing something different, something odd. His handheld scanner had picked up a signal earlier, faint, but pulsing like a heartbeat. It had led him here, to the center of the wreckage, where the stench of burnt wire and spilled fuel filled the air. He slowed as he approached the pile of crushed crates and twisted metal. The scanner gave one final beep, then fell silent. That had never happened before. Curious and tense, he dropped to one knee and began pulling away debris, metal plates, broken visors, a cracked piece of a drone's core. Then he froze. There, half buried in the dirt and wires, was a figure. Small, fragile, not human. Her skin was a pale shade of violet, almost gray, and her body was thin, too thin, like someone who hadn't eaten in weeks. One of her arms twitched. Her lips were cracked and dark, and there was dried blood on her chin. Her face looked young, impossibly young to be lying in a place like this. Taran leaned closer. For a moment, he thought she was already gone, then one eye fluttered open. "Please," she whispered, her voice no louder than a breath. He looked around instinctively. No one was near, no drones, no patrols, just the smoke and the dust. This wasn't a trap. No one was watching. The girl was alone. "You shouldn't be alive," he said softly. The girl coughed and fresh blood slipped from her lips. Taran hesitated. Helping her would mean risk. The laws were clear, no contact, no rescue, especially not with aliens. She wasn't even supposed to be here. But something about her reminded him of himself. There had been a time when he was left behind, when no one came. He pulled off more of the debris and gently reached out to check her injuries. Bones felt fragile, ribs broken. She winced at his touch but didn't pull away. Her hand moved slightly, brushing against his glove. "You're not trash," he muttered, more to himself than her. He didn't have much. A small pack with a thermal blanket, a couple of pain patches, and half a water tube. He slid an arm under her, lifting her carefully. She was lighter than he expected, too light. She shivered in the cold air as he wrapped the blanket around her and pressed the water tube to her lips. She choked at first, then drank slowly. "You need shelter," he said, glancing toward the hills. And fast. Taran's ship wasn't far. A small, battered cargo jumper hidden beneath camo netting, tucked into the rocks like a secret. As he carried her, the ground trembled, not from bombs, but from something else. A sleek black drone drifted across the sky above them. Taran ducked low, holding the girl tighter. The drone didn't seem to see them. He didn't wait to find out. They reached the ship, and the doors hissed open. Inside was cramped, cold, and dim, but safe. He laid her on the cot and turned up the heat. Her eyes fluttered, then closed again. The scanner on the wall pinged softly, showing a slow heartbeat and unreadable data. Half of her vitals didn't even register properly. "Who are you?" he whispered, staring at the strange silver markings on her armor. She didn't answer. Her lips were turning blue. Taryn moved to the console. He didn't have access to any official channels, but there was one frequency left, an old, hidden, one he hadn't used in years. He typed out a message, "Found alien girl, badly hurt, strange symbols, maybe royal. Need healer, urgent." He sent it and waited. Nothing. He looked back at her. Her chest rose and fell slowly. He touched her forehead. Ice cold. He remembered what it felt like to be forgotten. "Stay with me," he said softly. "Don't go." Her hand twitched again. Then, as if from nowhere, the console beeped. A reply flashed on the screen. "Bring her." Taryn didn't hesitate. He sealed the hatch and started the engine. Outside, the sky had begun to darken. Far above them, something huge moved in orbit. He didn't look back. The girl needed help, and if Earth's oldest healer still lived where the legend said, deep in the shadows of the mountains, then maybe, just maybe, she had a chance. As the ship rose from the ash, Taryn sat beside her and whispered the same words he wished someone had once said to him. "You're not alone. Not anymore." The wind howled as Taryn's ship pushed through the heavy clouds, its engines sputtering with every dip in altitude. Below, jagged cliffs reached out like broken fingers, hiding shadows in every crack. The place he was heading wasn't marked on any map. It was whispered about in old soldier stories, tales of a place where time didn't work right and the air itself remembered pain. They called it the Hollow Keep. And if the stories were true, it was the only place left that might save the girl. She lay wrapped in blankets on the cot beside him, still breathing but fading. Her skin had turned a dull gray, and the strange silver symbols on her arms had begun to pulse faintly. Taryn had tried everything he had, pain patches, heat, even an old stimulant shot, but nothing worked. She drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes mumbling in a language he didn't understand. Once, she had whispered his name. He didn't even know how she'd learned it. The ship rattled hard as it landed between two boulders coated in frost. Taryn shut off the engines and looked out the cracked window. Snow fell lightly, almost like dust. In the distance, nestled into the cliffs, stood a tower made of dark stone and metal, half buried by time. That was it. The Hollow Keep. No one had lived there for decades, maybe centuries, but the stories said someone still walked its halls. He gathered the girl in his arms, careful not to press against her broken ribs. Her head rested against his shoulder, her breath warm but weak. As he stepped into the cold, it hit him like a wall. The air was thin, biting, filled with the scent of rock and something older, something he couldn't name. Snow crunched under his boots as he approached the keep. The door was open, not wide, but enough for someone to enter if they dared. Taryn hesitated. Then a voice came from within, dry and low. "She shouldn't be here." He turned quickly. A figure stood in the shadow of the doorway, tall and wrapped in layered robes. His face was mostly hidden, but one eye shone beneath a hood, clear, sharp, and oddly kind. "I didn't know where else to go," Taryn said. "She's dying." The man stepped forward slowly, eyes on the girl. "She's not just injured. She's been marked." "Can you help her?" Taryn asked. The man didn't answer at first. Then he turned and walked inside, his robe dragging across the stone floor. "Follow me." The inside of the Hollow Keep was colder than outside, but still strangely alive. The walls were covered in symbols, some human, some not. Taryn followed the man through winding halls until they reached a room that glowed with soft blue light. In the center was a round platform, almost like an altar with carved stone walls rising around it. "Lay her there," the man said. Taryn did, carefully setting her down. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open for a moment before closing again. "I'm a Reeson," the man said. "They used to call me a healer. Now they just call me a ghost." Taryn watched as Arisen knelt beside the girl, placing his hands gently on her forehead. He began to whisper in a language Taryn didn't understand. The air grew heavy like the room itself was holding its breath. Then the girl's body began to glow. The silver markings on her arms spread to her shoulders, her neck, her face. Her back arched, and a sharp gasp escaped her lips. Arisen didn't. "Stop!" He pressed his hands to her temples, his voice rising. Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered. The stone under Taryn's feet trembled. The girl screamed, not in pain, but in something deeper, something more powerful. The walls echoed with the sound, like the mountain itself was waking up. Taryn moved forward, but Arisen raised a hand. "Do not touch her." The glow brightened. Then slowly it began to fade. The girl's body relaxed. Her eyes opened. She looked around the room, then at Taryn. "You carried me." "Yeah," he said quietly. "You were in the trash." She blinked, confused. Then her hand touched her chest. "They left me. After they drained me." "What do you mean?" Taryn asked. "She was used," Arisen said. "Her mind was locked, her memories sealed. The pain we just saw, that was her trying to remember." The girl sat up weakly. "I was a healer, before. I helped. I saved lives. But they said I felt too much, so they called me dangerous." Taryn frowned. "So they used you, then tossed you away." She nodded slowly. "My name is Siva." The name seemed to shimmer through the room. The blue light pulsed in response. Arisen stepped back. "She's more than a healer. She's a key." "A key to what?" Taryn asked. Arisen looked toward the far wall. "To something they buried long ago. A vault hidden deep in her world. Inside it, secrets, power, and one cure. The one thing her people fear the most." Siva leaned back against the stone, her breathing slow but steady now. "They called me broken, but they were scared." Taryn stood beside her. "If you're what they're afraid of, then they'll come again." "They already are," Arisen said. He pointed to a small device on the wall. It showed a dark shape above the planet, slowly circling. Taryn clenched his jaw. "Then we'd better be ready." And as the wind screamed outside, inside the hollow keep, truth was starting to wake. Snow fell in thick, silent sheets as the three figures stepped out of the hollow keep. Taryn walked ahead, his rifle slung across his back, boots crunching against the ice. Behind him, Arisen moved with calm purpose, his walking staff glowing faintly at the tip. Siva walked between them, her face pale, but her eyes clear now. She was healing slowly, but what she had remembered in the last day had changed everything. The hidden ship they had seen circling Earth wasn't just watching, it was waiting for her to either die or make a move. She had made her choice. They moved along a narrow path that led deeper into the mountains. The air grew colder the farther they went, but none of them complained. Siva barely spoke. Her memories came back in bursts, some sharp, some broken, but each one led to the same truth. She had been taken from a sacred vault on her homeworld, used for access, then abandoned when the leaders realized what she had seen. According to Arisen, the last piece of that truth wasn't in her mind. It was inside a vault, hidden deep beneath Earth's surface, an ancient place called the Gate of Memory. No one living had seen it. Most thought it was myth. But the symbols that had returned to Siva's skin, the ones that shimmered with every heartbeat, matched the stories carved into the walls of the hollow keep. She was the key, and the gate was calling her back. They reached a wide ridge, and beyond it stood the mountain's open mouth. The rock formed an arch, half swallowed by time. Thick roots curled around it like fingers guarding a secret. Arisen walked ahead and placed his hand on the stone. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the arch lit up with soft gold lines. A pulse ran through the ground. The door opened. Taryn tightened his grip on his pack and followed the others inside. The tunnel beyond was smooth, too perfect to be natural. The walls shimmered faintly, as if memory itself lived in the stone. As they walked, ghost-like images began to form. Hazy, flickering pictures suspended in the air. A man in white armor helping a wounded alien. A child smiling as a human passed her a book. An alien doctor standing beside a human scientist. The images moved around them like memories, soft and silent. Taryn slowed, looking around in disbelief. "These are real," he said. "These actually happened." "They were erased," Arison said softly, "because they didn't fit the story." Siva stopped in front of one image, herself, younger, laughing with a human girl in a bright room. She touched the image and it glowed briefly before fading. "They said we were enemies," she whispered. "But this was peace." The tunnel widened into a massive chamber. At the center was a platform of dark stone, and above it hovered a single object, a glass vial glowing softly blue. The light inside pulsed like a heartbeat. Taryn stepped forward, stunned. "What is it?" "A cure," Arison replied. "Not for wounds, for fear. For the madness that eats at her kind's leaders. This was their salvation, but they chose control instead." Siva reached for the vial. As her fingers brushed it, the entire room reacted. Walls lit up, images filled the air. Files, videos, plans. Not just peace, but kindness. Generations of shared knowledge between humans and her people. Hidden, denied, destroyed, and then came the sound of footsteps. Taryn turned sharply, his weapon up. From the tunnel, 5 figures emerged. Tall, cloaked and masked. Their armor was marked by no symbols, pure black. One of them spoke. "Give her to us." His voice was cold and sharp like metal dragged across ice. Siva stood tall even as her legs trembled. "No, you are property," the man growled. "You were created to obey." "I was born to feel," she replied, voice steady. "And I remember." The chamber trembled. The walls shimmered, and then the memories began to play louder, faster, projecting past the chamber into the tunnel, into the mountain. The truth refused to stay buried. The masked figures stepped forward, but as they did, the memories touched them too. One stopped. Another took off his mask, revealing tired eyes filled with confusion. "They told us you were monsters," he said. "But I remember a hand that saved me." The leader barked at him to resist, but he didn't move. Then the vial in Siva's hands pulsed with light. A white glow spread across her skin. She raised it, not as a weapon, but as proof. The truth could no longer be silenced. One by one, the attackers lowered their weapons. The chamber stood still but not silent, filled with breathing, memory, and something else. Change. Arison stepped forward. "The gate has opened, and now the question is, what will you do with it?" Siva turned to the others, her voice calm. "Show them what they tried to hide. We let memory do what fear never could. We begin again." The cold wind swept through the valley as the sun broke over the snow-covered peaks. Light spilled down into the mountains, catching on the stone and glass of the ancient chamber where the truth had finally been set free. Taryn stood near the entrance of the Gate of Memory, watching as the last of the masked soldiers slowly removed. Their helmets. Their faces were no longer cold or hostile. Most looked lost. Some looked ashamed. But none raised their weapons again. Siva stood in the center of the chamber, her arms covered in soft silver light, her body surrounded by floating images from the vault. Every memory that had once been buried was now free. Proof of peace, of kindness, of a bond between species that had been erased out of fear. She held the glowing vial in her hand, not as a weapon, but as a symbol of something much bigger. A second chance. Around her, the orbs floated gently, showing visions of humans, helping alien children, teaching, healing, sharing knowledge. No violence, no conquest, just care. The leaders had arrived. From the skies above, sleek ships had descended into the valley, but this time they did not bring war. The diplomatic delegates stepped out in silence, dressed in long robes, their faces hidden. One of them, taller than the rest, walked to the front and stared at Siva. His voice was flat, cold. "You will return with us," he said. "This truth ends here." "No," she answered calmly. "It begins here." The delegates exchanged uneasy glances, but the tall one stepped forward again. "This will bring chaos. It will bring memory," Siva replied, "and memory is stronger than fear." Taryn stood beside her now. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. He had carried her from the edge of death. He had seen the truth in her before she even knew who she was. And now, he was watching the beginning of something new. Irison, the old healer, moved slowly to the platform at the center. He raised one hand and the floating orbs of memory began to rise, drifting like stars toward the valley below. "Let them see," he said. "Let everyone see," the delegates shouted. Some called for guards, but no one moved. Because in the crowd that had gathered, civilians, soldiers, scouts, eyes were already wide with realization. Some fell to their knees, weeping softly as memories unlocked inside them. Others clutched their heads, overwhelmed by the flood of truth. And one, a soldier who had once been told humans were monsters, remembered a warm blanket handed to him by a human nurse during a cold night many years ago. Siva stepped forward. "You took everything from me. My voice, my memories, my identity. But you couldn't take my heart, and now I remember who I am." "You are just one girl," the tall delegate said. She looked around at the crowd, then back at him. And that was enough. The vial in her hand pulsed again, and this time, she opened it. Not to use, but to release. A soft blue light drifted from the vial like mist, moving across the valley like a wave. It didn't burn. It didn't destroy. It passed through people gently, like a memory whispering across their skin. Wherever it touched, old pain softened, old truths returned, and lies broke apart like glass in the sun. The crowd grew quiet. No more shouting, no more fear. The world, for a moment, stood still. Taryn watched it all unfold, unsure if he was dreaming. He had been forgotten, just like her, left behind in the dirt. But now he stood at the center of a miracle, not one made of power, but one made of choice. The choice to remember, to care, to believe again. Later, as the day faded into evening, the delegates left quietly. They did not win, but they had seen what they could no longer deny. The truth had spoken, and it had spoken through the very girl they tried to erase. Siva walked to the edge of the valley, her robe fluttering in the wind. Taryn joined her, hands deep in his coat. "So," he said, glancing at her, "what now?" She smiled faintly, her eyes shining in the fading light. "We take it home, all of it. The truth, the cure, the memory. They need to see it for themselves." "You think they'll listen?" "They won't have a choice," she replied. "Not anymore." He nodded, then hesitated. "You sure you want to go back?" She turned to him, stepping close. "You carried me when no one else would. You reminded me I was worth saving. I'll never forget that." Taryn swallowed the lump in his throat and managed a smile. "Don't make me cry in front of the aliens." Siva laughed softly and stepped aboard the waiting shuttle. It wasn't a royal ship or a war cruiser, just a transport, simple and quiet. As it rose into the sky, Taryn watched until it disappeared into the clouds. He stood alone now, surrounded by silence. But it wasn't the silence of fear anymore. It was the silence of something new being born. And far above, beyond the clouds, stars shifted slightly, like they too had been watching. A light once thrown away had risen again. and it would never be lost.